Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, so last class we were discussing different procedure to find out internal response given that we have already found out the displacement. Okay, and we discussed two procedures. The first procedure was directly relating this nodal displacement in each mode to element forces, and we could do that using storage stiffnesses, or if it's not a multi-story building, if it's a simple, let us say a frame, something like this here, then it would be simply whatever the stiffness of this would be, let us say in this direction if I'm considering the degree of freedom, or if it is considering degree of freedom, then whatever the this is, okay, times this displacement that we have. Okay, so the idea is the first method basically consider relating the displacement at different degrees of freedom directly to the forces using the relationships that we have between the stiffnesses and the displacement and the forces, okay, element forces. The second step is the conventional step that we have been doing so far. In that step, we simply say that instead of applying displacements and then relating my element forces to do those displacement. Okay, so remember, first approach is something like this. You know this stiffness and you basically relate it to the displacement. Displacement is known for each mode. Element stiffnesses can be used to relate this to displacement. Okay, so we are making use of displacement. In the second case, we are not using displacement at all or deformation in the structure. Okay, although we are using it to derive the initial formula. Okay, so we are saying that we are going to be applying equivalent static forces. Okay, so for the same case, if we discuss, if we have a force applied like this, can we not directly say that force here or the shear force here would be directly whatever the force here is? There is no displacement is not coming into picture here. Similarly, if I have to find the horizontal force here, it would be simply this force here by considering the equilibrium here. And if I have to consider moment here, it would be moment due to this force and moment due to this force. Okay, and this is the preferred method. Okay, although you can choose any method you like, and in terms of difficulty also I feel that both methods are similar here, especially for multi-degree of freedom system. Okay, so when I will discuss any example, I will show you both method. Whatever you feel comfortable with, you can choose that method to solve the problem. Okay, so we have this approach. We did one example using the first approach. Okay, that was just relating the storage stiffnesses to the displacement. Let us see that the second approach. So our problem was this. Okay, two-story building here. Okay, or I was also considering this this representation here. So whatever representation suits you. This is 2K, 2M, and K and M. Okay, so let us find out what are the equivalent forces that needs to be equivalent static forces that needs to be applied. Now in the nth mode, the equivalent static forces Fn nt would be what? Remember, equivalent static forces is always stiffness times the displacement. If it's the nth mode, this is what we'll have. Okay, and Kn times Un is nothing but phi n times Qnt. Kn is what? Omega n square m times phi n times Qnt. Okay, so you can use this expression here, okay, to find out the equivalent static forces. Now let us, for the first mode, we can find out, remember omega, I will just write it here again. Omega 1 was K by 2m and phi 1 was half and 1. Omega 2 was 2K by m and phi 2 was minus half and m. Okay, so if I consider first mode, it would be simply omega n square, which is K by 2m times the mass matrix, which is this matrix here, then half 1, and Q1T I had found out. Okay, remember what was the Q1T here? If you look at here, these were Q1T and Q2T. Okay, 2P0 by 3K times R1 sine omega t. So let us write that down. 2P0 by 3K times R1 sine omega t. Okay, so we just need to simplify this expression to find out the forces at different location. Okay, so let us do that. I have K by 2m here, and this would be m and m here, and I have 2P0 by 3K times R1 sine omega t. Okay, so let us multiply this and see what do we get. I can take m outside, and then I can also multiply with k. Basically, what I will have here is P0 by 3, okay, 1 R1 sine omega t. Okay, so the forces are, if you consider this here, okay, at degree of freedom 1, which is this, is basically P0 by 3 R1 sine omega t, and here also P0 by 3 R1 sine omega t. Okay, now if you consider F2, which is for the second mode, it would be omega 2 square m times phi 2 times Q2T. Let us see what is this. This is 2K by m. Okay, m is same here. And this is minus 1 and 1 for the second mode. And this was, I think, minus P0 by 6K times R2 sine omega t. So if we multiply it here, okay, this I will get as minus P0 divided by 3. Okay, and this I will get as minus 2m and m here, and R2 sine omega t. Okay, so finally I get here P0 by 3, not m. M is already cancelled off. So this is 1 here. It would be 2 here and minus 1 here. R2 sine omega 2. So in the second case, if you look at, these are the forces here. Okay, or the degree of freedom 1, this is 2P0 by 3 R2 sine omega t, and degree of freedom 1, it is in the opposite direction, minus P0 by 3 R2 sine omega t. So these are the forces that are applied. So the story shear is like, easy to find for each mode. For example, in this mode, this is nothing but story shear in the second story in the first mode, V21 here. And this is story shear in the first mode, first story in the first mode here. Okay, and if you take the equilibrium, your V21, or let us first write down V11. V11 would be nothing but just sum of both these. So 2P0 by 3 R1 sine omega t, and V21 would be just this quantity here. So P0 by 3 R1 sine omega t. Okay, similarly here, okay, story 2 mode 2, okay, story 1 mode 2. Okay, maybe I should write here mode 1 here and mode 2 here. Okay, so again, like what we have done previously, V12 becomes sum of these two. There is a negative sign, so effectively it would be P0 by 3 R2 sine omega t, and then I would have V22 here. That would be minus P0 by 3 R2 sine omega t. Okay, so if you consider at the first story, V1 would be contribution of first mode plus contribution of second mode at the first story. So let us just sum this up, and we will get here as P naught by 3 to R1 plus R2 sine omega t, and V2 is again contribution of first mode plus contribution of second mode. So we will sum up this and this here, and that will we will get as P naught by 3 R1 minus R2 sine omega t. Okay, so let us look at whether we got the same answer or not. Okay, so where did it go? Yes, here. Can you see we have got the same answer that we have obtained using directly calculating the storage here. And I mean, it's important that you understand both methods, because both methods are correlated. And if you want to have a full control over multi-degree of freedom system, the understanding of it, you need to do by both method and compare the results. You can choose to do any one method, but every problem, while you are practicing it on your own, not in the exam, you do using both method and compare the answer. What it will provide you, first, it will clarify your concept of all this multiplication. Second, it will help you to do the same method using both, same problem using both methods and compare your answers. So it's when you practice the problem, you try to do using both methods and see whether you get the same answer or not. Okay. Any doubt up to this point? Anyone? If you did not understand one of these steps, you should be clear about both these steps. Okay. Now, remember that we are right now doing everything in terms of steady state response. So in terms of time t, but in the end, as a structural engineer or as a design engineer, basically what do? You design for peak forces, peak earthquake forces, or peak any other force. So at that point of time, this t will go off, and we will talk about in terms of the peak responses. Okay, and we'll see how to do that. But right now we are doing everything in terms of time. Okay. Clear? Okay, if it is clear, then let us move on to, we have talked a lot about modal decomposition of force, basically diagonalization of mass matrix, diagonalization of stiffness matrix. Now let us look at the forces. Okay, so what I mean to say, when I apply any force vector, okay, to a structure, all right, the force would also distribute itself among different modes. And we said that, okay, that if we have force PT, which is defined as P1T and then P2T and so on. Okay, the way to find out P and T, I need to be clear about this. This is small p here. P and T is basically the vector. Okay, or not the vector. The excitation force in the nth mode. Okay, so effective force in the nth mode. How do we get that? We simply get that by multiplying, like others, with transpose of the mode shape times the p vector here. This is this. Okay, and this would give me P and T. Okay, now when I take P and T, okay, like any other vectors, like my vector ut here, okay, I know that my force would also be distributed in different modes. Okay, so I will have effective forces at different degrees of freedom in different modes. Okay, and that's where the concept of expansion of this forces comes into picture, that what would be the expansion of my vector P, okay, to different modes. Okay, and let us see how do we do that. Okay, so basically what I'm saying, let us say I have a force PT, okay, for which, okay, so if I have something like this, let us say at different degrees of freedom, okay, and all of these have same time variation, okay, same time variation, then I can write down my force vector P as a vector that represents the spatial distribution of that force times the same time variation PT. Okay, I'm writing it like that because it will later help me in the analysis and interpretation of the result. Okay, and we will see how do we do that, how do we get the distribution. Okay, so basically, let us say I have something like that. This vector, what I wish to do for different mode, I want to get the spatial distribution as something like this. Okay, so instead of saying like this, let us say some distribution is there. Okay, and I want to see okay, and so on. So let us say this is my vector S here. I want to find out a vector S1 plus a vector S2 and so on for each mode. So this is, let us say, mode 1 and this is mode 2 here. Okay. Is that clear what I'm trying to do here? I have a force vector which I have written as PT, and if the PT has the same time variation at all degrees of freedom, I can write it something like this S, which represents the spatial distribution. Basically, if this is 0.1, 0.2, okay, this is, let us say, 0.15, this is 0.6, okay, times the PT, which is the time variation. And like, why we are doing this? Because if you remember, the seismic excitation has a property something like this, where all the degrees of freedom are subjected to the same time variation of the force, which is the UG double dot T. Okay, so we will utilize this knowledge there. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so basically I want to write this as, let us say, summation R equal to 1 to N, and this is SR. Okay, so sum of multiple modes. Okay, now this can be written as, okay, a modal participation vector, which we write it as gamma of R. Okay, let us say this is gamma of R times mass matrix times phi R, which is the mode shape vector for that particular mode R, and then sum it over. So basically what I'm saying that my SAR or SR here is basically nothing but this quantity here. Okay, and a question might ask that how can I directly writing this equal to this much? Well, if you remember, to get the modal coordinates Q1, Q2, we had written, okay, we had written again mass, or like, this vector here, uh, phi times QR summation R equal to 1 to N. Okay. The idea is that if I write it in terms of multiplication with some mode shape and multiply with the transpose of another mode shape, I can use the condition of orthogonality and I can find out these vectors here, or these factors that we have defined. Okay, so I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to multiply, okay, this as S here and this R equal to 1 to N. Okay, and this I will multiply phi R, again the same quantity phi N times mass times phi R. Now as you know, this quantity would always be 0 except when R equal to N. Okay, and if that is the case, I'm just, the only term that is going to survive here would be when R is equal to N. So I'm going to write this as phi N times S is equal to this phi n T mass and phi n. And this is nothing but the diagonalized mass element Mn. Okay, so gamma n can be written as S times Mn. So remember, if I have a vector S which is given, remember force is given, the external force is given. And if I can write down that external force, let us say Pt equal to a spatial distribution vector S times some time variation. Okay, let us say small pt. So this is also given. I know my mass vector. I know my stiffness vector. I want to write this as sum of vectors spatial for each mode so that I can see how much is the contribution being made by the vector force vector in each mode. So S can be found out as, so remember, once you find out this gamma n, I can get my spatial distribution in nth mode as, how would I get that? Just write this expression here, gamma n times mass times phi n. Okay, and then we can get the total distribution or expansion like this. So once we know the gamma n, then Sn we can also obtain like this, and this would be the spatial distribution. Okay, now let us see what are the properties of this, or what are the physical interpretation of this Sn. Okay, now you know that when you will apply this force, external force Pt, okay, a structure can vibrate in any of its modes, right? Now, when a structure is vibrating in each of its modes, can I say in each mode it would have some inertial forces associated with each degree of freedom? Can I say that? Okay. What Sn basically represent? It represents the distribution of those inertial forces associated with the application of the applied force. Okay, so again, I will repeat it. If you apply external forces Pt on a multi-degree of freedom system, okay, let us say something like this. Okay, in each mode, the structure will vibrate. Okay, and when the structure is vibrating, it would have inertial forces associated with each degree of freedom. Okay, what this Sn represents is basically distribution of those inertial forces in each mode. Okay, and when you multiply with the time variation of this force, it will give you basically the total external force that is being applied on that mode. Okay, but Sn just represents the inertial force distribution. Is that clear? What is the meaning of Sn here? Okay, this is the expansion of the applied force in different modes. We did expansion of our mode shapes, basically different modes using the displacement vector. Now this is the force, that is effective force in each of the modes. Okay, and we can do this for earthquake forces, and doesn't have to be earthquake forces as long as the time variation at each degree of freedom is same and you are able to represent your force vector as some spatial distribution vector times, okay, same time variation. Okay, let us say this is not kt, let us say this is some small pt, which is the time variation. Then we can interpret results like this. Okay, and like we can prove that mathematically as well. Let us say inertial force in my nth mode would be what? In my nth mode, the inertial force, let us say min here, would be mass matrix times the acceleration of each degree of freedom in that nth mode, right? So let us say this is the nth mode. The inertial force is mass times acceleration, which is unt. Okay. Now unt is what? Remember, unt is phi n times qnt. So all I need to do is that take the double differentiation of the time function here. So mass times, this is phi n here times Q and double T. Now, if you compare this, remember, if you compare this to P, the time variation of the force, capital P equal to phi times PT. Okay, not phi times, sorry. S times PT. This is the time variation. This is the time variation. What is S here? S is basically this quantity. Okay, and this quantity is what? This is the spatial distribution associated with the inertial forces that I have. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. Now, what happens that if you have a force, if you are able to find out Sn vector, which is the spatial distribution of force, Sn times the time variation Pt of this force, okay, would give you the response in the nth mode, response of all degrees of freedom in nth mode. In nth mode. Okay, and there is no other mode that is going to contribute to this response, because now this is the effective force that you have found out, assuming that this is how the total force is going to be distributed among different modes. Okay, if this is clear, now let us look back at our equation of motion in terms of this S. Okay, if you remember, our equation of motion was mn times qn double dot t plus cn times qn dot t plus kn times qn t, and this was equal to p and t here. Okay, now I can go ahead and I can divide it by mn, so that this would be qn t, and this becomes 2 zeta omega n, zeta n, sorry, plus omega n square q and t. Now remember, p and t I can write as zeta n times the p vector, right? So when I multiply with this mn, this is nothing but phi t, and pt, if it can be written as spatial distribution, some time variation, I can write it like this. Okay, the time variation, and I'm dividing it with by mn. Okay, now what is this quantity here? Is it not gamma n that we have already derived? So our equation of motion can be written as zeta n omega n plus omega n square q and t is equal to gamma n times the time variation pt. Okay, so this is my equation of motion for each degree of freedom, where this is a factor, gamma n is basically a factor which is a modal participation factor. So I'll write it anyway. This is called modal participation factor. Okay, so this factor basically says that of the given force, how much is the total force that is going to be applied in the particular mode. Okay, and this is what basically the excitation force becomes. What you are used to do, you can solve this equation. Remember, we have done nothing new. We are just considering a special case. Okay, so this is just one of the special case for which it can be written like that. Okay, so let us say this is a special case. Okay, and if this special case is still not there, you can still write down the same thing, pt as some vector, and do the same thing and multiply and solve it. Okay, it's not that it has to be like this. Okay, so using this, the modal participation factor, we have now written down our equation of motion in this form here, which is basically the equation of motion of a single degree of freedom system subject to excitation pt multiplied with gamma n to account for the distribution of the force in its nth mode. Clear up to this point? Okay. And I mean, let us say many times what happens, okay, you have or you would have the solution of this equation available. Okay. And I will give you some example. Okay. Let us say I have a building. Okay. Let us say the same two-story building. And let us say this is being applied to a blast load or a triangular pulse, let us say. So this is the load and you know the time variation of this load. So it is being applied with the same variation PT here and here. Similarly, instead of this, I could have pulse load or I could have like, ground motion, which is something like this. Okay. For all these type of motion, we have a standard result available from the previous chapters, right? In which we solved the equation of motion this, right? You solve the equation of motion. Not Q. Let me first write down in terms of U. U equal to PT, where PT could be one of these forces here. So equation solution to this one is available, which is basically response of a single degree of freedom system to any of these pulses. Now, if I know the time variation of these forces are to be the same, and I know the solution, and the same thing is now being applied to a multi-degree of freedom system, what do I need to do? To consider response of each mode, I just need to multiply whatever response I get here by gamma. So think it in like, two step. First step is to get the time variation of the response. Okay, for our case, it is Qt. Okay, these responses are available using standard results. So solution to this one is solution to this SDOF system is available. Problem is now I have a multiple degree of freedom system. Okay. So solution to this is available. How do I utilize this for a multiple degree of freedom system? Now I know that multiple degree of freedom system can be represented using n number of, if n is the degree of freedom, single degree of freedom system. Okay. So to utilize this result, all I need to do is to multiply response of this using this to get for that particular. Okay. So you will also see in the book, it might be written as D here instead of U to avoid any confusion. Okay. So this is D dot and this is D here. So this is available. If you want to find out Q and T for a multiple degree of freedom system, it would be nothing but this factor accounting for the distribution of the total force in the nth mode time the standard results that you available here. Let us say this is D and T you obtain. Okay, so I assume that all of you got this, what we are doing here. And we had done like this for the generalized SDOF system, if you remember, and in the response spectra chapter. Okay, we have done that. Okay, I was just repeating for the multiple degree of freedom system, this factor zeta n. For a generalized SDOF system, instead of zeta, instead of gamma n, we have gamma equivalent. Okay, but here it is for that particular mode. Okay, so Qn we can get it like this. Okay, and if I have to get the contribution of the nth mode to the total displacement at each degree of freedom, all I need to do is remember this would be this would be phi n times Q and T, right? Now Q and T I can write it as zeta times dn. So this I can write it as phi n times d and t. Okay. Similarly, if I have to find out equivalent static force in the nth mode, okay. So if I have to find out, let us say equivalent static force in the nth mode, I can find this out simply as writing this as k times unt. K is here. Unt is my, I can write this expression here. It would become zeta n times phi n times dnt. Okay. And if I want, I can further write down using eigenvalue equation this as omega n square times m times phi n. So this I can write down as m phi n, and there would be omega n square term here as well. So let me just write that times dn here. Okay. Now what is my, let me again recall. If you remember, Sn was zeta n times m times phi n, isn't it? This was the expression. So can I not write this? I can combine this and this term here. I can write this as omega n squared times Sn times dn. Okay. So this is vector here, or instead of writing it like this, let me combine it. Sn times omega n square times dnt. Okay, what is this quantity here? This is the acceleration, right? In the nth mode. And this is exactly what I told you when I was discussing the physical interpretation, that if you apply a force which will have the distribution s times some time variation. Okay, Sn represents basically the forces in its nth mode. Okay, the inertial forces in its nth mode due to those applied forces. And that becomes clear here. I also told you that if you multiply those forces with the acceleration, you would get the equivalent static forces in that particular mode. Is this clear to all of you? Any doubt up to this point? If not, then let us look at the most common problem that you might encounter. Okay, would be earthquake analysis, right? So for seismic excitation. Okay. Now for seismic excitation, what is my applied force vector? This is my applied force. P effective is, what is my P effective? It is mass matrix times the influence vector times the ground acceleration. Right. I hope you have not forgotten this. We had derived this in the 2 chapters ago. That what is this? The effective force for seismic excitation of a multi-degree of freedom system. An influence vector, you already know how to get influence vector. Basically, you apply a unit displacement in the direction of the ground motion, and then you see along each degree of freedom due to that unit displacement what is the corresponding displacement, and then you form the influence vector. So I had given you example of this. Okay, if you define this one as u1 and u2 and you have ground motion like this, then if you apply a unit displacement ugt equal to 1, okay, influence vector is constructed like here it is 1. If the ground displacement is 1, u1 is 1. However, u2 is 0. Okay, so as simple as that. This is my influence vector, and you multiply with the mass matrix, and this is the time variation of force. So basically this is of the form this that we have discussed, right? The vector s times some time variation pt. Okay, where my vector s is basically nothing but m times l. Okay, so I hope there is no doubt. Now I can repeat the same procedure and I can show you how to get that. So let us do this. Let me write down here basically the equation of motion that we get. Mn times Qn double dot Cn times Q1 dot plus Kn times Qn is now equal to phi n, or let me write down P effective n, which is in this case, what would be the Pn here? It would be minus phi n t times